Live from New York, I'm Laura Ingle filling in for Connell McShane today, and it's a busy day on Capitol Hill. Let's get into it. The House passing the Genius Act, the first ever major piece of crypto legislation in Congress. The bill offers a regulatory framework for stablecoin issuers. Lawmakers are set to speak soon, and we want to get into this with our panel. Right now, we've got Melik Abdul, Republican strategist and radio talk show host, and Navin Nayak should join us in just a minute. So we're going to get to that. So Melik, I mean, what do you think this achieves for President Trump? We've got our cameras there. We're waiting. What do you say?
Well, this is any win when you get, well, first of all, I shouldn't talk about this. First of all, Donald Trump, anytime you get Congress to actually do something, that is an actual win. So the fact that even as divided as Congress is now, they're able to get some sort of legislation out, I think that's a good thing. But keep in mind that we're only about 6 months into Donald Trump's presidency. So there's a lot of things that Congress needs to do, and especially ahead of the midterms, because I think what many people are looking at now is that we're going to get into a situation where, unfortunately, Donald Trump probably won't be able to get a lot passed after this year, which is why I believe that he tried to get so much, he tried to load so much on the front end of this.
Sure. And Navin now joining the conversation as we are waiting for this press conference to get underway. Let's talk about the Genius Act and your thoughts on that.
Listen, I think a lot of American people see this as at the core of what they don't like about Washington, unfortunately, even though I think there's a lot of interest in trying to figure out how to regulate a new industry like crypto. I think the story that most Americans are going to hear is that the industry spent $130 million in their campaign, and these two bills were their top priority, and now Congress is acting on them. And I think part of the way in which they're acting is taking away a lot of the oversight and regulation that crypto industry didn't like. Remember, they were very unhappy with Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, and that is one of the big things that Republicans and Donald Trump are delivering on, which is taking away the SEC's role in oversight. And that should be really concerning to the American people and this industry itself.
Yeah, and as we continue to watch the action on Capitol Hill in Washington, we're getting ready for this presser to get underway. While we're waiting, let's move topics for just a moment, because senators advanced President Trump's nomination of Emil Bovee to the appeals court. But, we had some drama with Democrats walking out of the vote, demanding Republicans call a whistleblower who alleged that Bovee advocated for ignoring court orders. Senator Cory Booker appealed directly to committee chair Chuck Grassley. Let's take a listen to that.
With all appeals to your integrity, with all appeals to past jurisdiction and past precedent, why are you doing this? This is outrageous.
This is a kangaroo court. That's all we have here, Mr. Chairman.
This is wrong. To violate your own rules without going by the mandates of the parliamentarian. This is unbelievable.
Okay, so things got spicy. We'll get your reaction. Melik, I'll start with you.
Well, of course, this is, Spartacus is doing what Spartacus has always done. I would encourage your audience to actually go back to as the complaint is about violating the rules or normal regular order, go back to 2023 and listen to, I think that was Dick Durbin, fighting against Republicans' complaint about the judicial nominations and the process of which Democrats at that time, who had control of Congress, were doing. So, Republicans complain about it. When Democrats do it, Democrats are now complaining about it, that, Donald Trump is in office. I think this guy ultimately is going to get through, but this is just Cory Booker doing a theatrical thing that he normally does. At the end of the day, I do expect him to get through.
Yeah, so many people wondering what is next for the Democratic Party. And Navin, David Hogg appeared on the Hill Nation Summit yesterday. We wanted to play you a little bit about what he had to say about the Democratic Party. Listen.
This is a cultural problem we have in the party. I think our number one philosophy as a default when it comes to how do we win is what raises us the most money and pisses off the fewest people in the entrenched political establishment. As a party, many of our leaders are more interested in keeping the power structures the same that got them there than actually challenging the status quo that could be overall collectively way more beneficial to all of us, but may potentially threaten their own position of power.
Okay, so let's talk about some numbers because a new poll shows that Democrats' favorability is actually underwater compared to Republicans. So let's take a look at our screen. Given what Hogg said, what does it need to do differently at this point?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things the Democratic Party has to work on. There's no question. I think coming out of the 24 election, their favorability is in terrible shape. I think the one positive thing I think for Democrats is that a lot more of the problem is driven by people actually not having a sense of what their top priorities are and what their actual, what solutions they want to put forward, rather than, now that I think we're past the 24 election, it's less of a, you have a lot of the base that's frustrated with how they're responding to President Trump. And I think that will change as Democrats engage in more of these sort of challenges to the administration.
All right. I also want to shift while I have you guys to the National Day of Action protests honoring the late John Lewis. Now, right now, there are more than 1,600 protests planned today against President Trump's policies. So we've been talking a lot about how these protests work, too, by the way. So how seriously do Republicans take these protests, Melik?
The Democrats have been actually protesting against Donald Trump, I believe, since the Thursday after he was elected in 2016. So this really isn't surprising. You go 5 years ago around this time in 2020, they were protesting in the streets around police brutality. John Lewis, of course, the Black Lives Matter Plaza, all of these things happened, especially here in Washington, D.C. Then, even though they were protesting against police reform, there were 18 unarmed people, black people, killed by police officers in 2020. And in 2023, that number was 16. We just had the King's protest. I believe the Democrats are still in protest mode because they don't have an identity. They don't have a leader. Hakeem Jeffries, unfortunately, I don't believe is a good leader for the Democrats at this point. And when you have David Hogg saying that he's going to campaign or primary members of the Democratic Party when he was in the position at the DNC, I just think that the Democratic Party really is in chaos and they need an identity.
Oh, Naveen, do you agree with that?
Well, I don't know. No, I don't agree with that basic idea. I think Leader Jeffries has been really strong in many ways. He's the leader of the Democrats in the House. I think it's a tall task to assume he's going to be the head of the entire party. I think he's been out there really aggressively highlighting, the Republican Party has some real challenges ahead of it, right? They've passed what is unquestionably the most unpopular piece of legislation that is going to gut middle class and working class families in this country. And I think the challenge for Republicans, which they've masked over the last 5 months, is they've put all their chips in the Donald Trump basket, and that is a deeply unpopular basket with the American people. And I think they're going to have a hard time coming back once more Americans see what they've done to their lives.
Yeah, I mean, so many people are talking about protests. Look, the summer is just getting started. We know that there's going to be more coming, and we've seen other protests like this recently, and Melik brought it up, the No Kings protests. But what does this all mean when we talk about 2026? Does that translate? What does it do when we're getting there?
Listen, I think there's a ton of energy on the left writ large. I think people are pretty distraught by what this administration is doing. And honestly, most Americans should be. I mean, we are much less free today than we were November of 24. People are getting arrested for no cause on the street with no process. And that should be a terrifying thing to all Americans. And so you're seeing what actually America was built on, which is this notion that we are a free people and we have the right to express ourselves, including expressing ourselves in opposition to our government. This used to be something that Republicans believed in. I think what's really disheartening and why we find ourselves in this moment is that the Republican Party has said freedom is not as important as Donald Trump. Donald Trump is more important to us, and that's why we're in this moment. Americans should be heartened by seeing their fellow Americans in the streets protesting peacefully.
Melik, I'm going to give you just a few seconds to respond, and then we got to leave it there. Give you the last word.
Absolutely. Real quickly, if you go back and look at the Biden's bill, the Build Back Better bill, and also Obamacare, if you look at the polling numbers, the Build Back Better bill, the black bills, whatever the bill is for the Republicans here, it is this around the same number when it comes to unpopularity. I'm getting my BBBs confused here.
The big, beautiful bill. Right. All right. Naveen and Melik, thank you very much. Appreciate your time and your energy today on our show.